listed.
It's your prerogative.
That's how I have it listed.
You know, again, when we're having budget work sessions, this format, this linear format doesn't work for me. I want to be facing my colleagues, I want to be engaged in a closer environment, put a table there and let the people.
Well, you said that, but didn't you read Derek's?
He said something, but I ignored whatever he said.
What he said was we can't broadcast it then.
Well, you can, it's just gonna be very flimsy. I mean, you're not gonna be able to hear well. If you don't wanna broadcast the budget workshop, that's fine. And wanna get into it, I just don't think the broadcasting would work in that format.
I'm gonna put it up on the screen as well, so that everybody can see.
I just feel more comfortable in a work session.
No, I totally understand that.
This is a whole new world.
Yeah, I mean, we can make
I
adjustments.
actually agree with that. And if we have a round table, if we have a round table, I wouldn't be so triste.
See the first. Yep. Otherwise we'll shut my age. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And if we can just remain standing, and pause and reflect on what happened so tragically on 9/11 20 years ago. We need to remember our fallen first responders and citizens. May we always remember.
Good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
I'm going to announce that the meeting is being streamed on YouTube. This is a published meeting, but we normally meet the first and third Tuesdays. The next second and fourth Tuesdays of this month are going to be budget workshops. So this format will be a little different. I'm going to reorder the agenda a little bit and go to new business and take care of those things first so that it doesn't get tagged on to the end of what might be a lengthy budget workshop meeting. The first new business order is a recommendation for Kathy Kavanaugh to be appointed to the board of the Malvern Library. The board interviewed Kathy for.
I'll make a motion to appoint Kathy Kavanaugh to the Malvern Library Board and representing East Coast and representing East.
There it is.
There you go.
All right.
Discussion.
Kathy's
No,
resume
terrific.
was terrific. So, okay, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Next is to consider Public Works personnel request. Mark Miller has asked us to for permission to hire another staff person at the public projects that we're facing, including all the dams, some two large sewer projects, and a couple other things. And part of the issue is we have a creeping overtime right now because of trying to get all the things done that are demanded by the public works force, and so some of the cost of this will be offset by a decrease, hopefully, in overtime, unless we get slammed with more public works projects. So with that as background, anyone like to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion, but my microphone's not working too well, so I'm just gonna speak up. I would make the motion to that we hire a new public works employee with the information that Mark provided and Dave Ware provided as far as their budgetary issues. The employee will start October the 4th, 2021.
I'll second that motion. There was a recommendation from township staff to bring in a new public works employee, and the estimated total cost in the range of $80,000 for 2022. I support the additional skilled labor resource the Township Public Works Department than any other public works department in the county. And while trail and park maintenance may it is, in my opinion, secondary to the increased demands on public works, including sewer plant system operations, road maintenance and paving, with recreation facilities maintenance, and the regulatory environment, considering things like worker safety and those related items. So that was a response I gave to a citizen, and I thought it would be worth airing here in that context.
Yeah, I'll mention that it was in the proposed in the 2022 budget, so the impact on the 2021 is 3 months at all in 80,000, which includes salary, benefits, and so
Employees
forth.
for
Yeah,
that sort of thing, yeah.
May I offer a comment?
Sure.
Being the curmudgeon and the fiscal conservative, I'm against this. I have the utmost respect for Mark Miller and his crew. I think it should be put into the 2022 budget. It should not be put in now.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jim.
Any further board member input? Any comments from the public? I'll call the question. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No,
Motion carries 3-1. Thank you. This truck, it can be used
Short term, although that's a long-term issue, but I just want to mention that.
And then the other item, we just wanted to be clear on this asset, this fleet asset that we're adding to
I'll turn it over to Dave shortly, but I just wanted to thank Dave real quick and all the finance staff for the work they continue to put in on this. As you said, it's not an entirely new process just for Dave and I, but really an entirely new process for the way East Goshen is going about the budget. So that being said, just preliminarily for the viewers on YouTube and here, it is our thinking, and again, this is fluid because this is our first time, so if things need to change, obviously we can do that on the fly. Right now, we are planning on at least four budget workshops, and that is in addition to the preliminary budget discussion in November and the final budget discussion in December. So you're talking a total of 4 budget workshops, 2 additional meetings, 6 total meetings regarding the budget. So it's quite a heavy load. Dave's been working a lot on this. Finance has been working a lot on this. So I thank him. And again, we'll continue to adjust as needed. But so far, I just want to let everybody know this is not, us putting up numbers here and saying this is what it's going to be. We're sort of letting the board have their first crack at this and doing it in a public setting. So, we welcome the board's input, and Dave, you can take it away.
Dave, before you start, the last quarterly, second quarter budget report that we got, the 3-ring binder with everything. One of those inclusions in there was always the projections for year end. Do you have any of that with you, and can we just kind of talk first about how we're going to end up the year with the current budget?
The Q2?
Well, I actually have the Q2 here, yeah, but do you have anything more recent than that?
Well, you wouldn't have a third quarter. The best you could do, Dave, would be even July. I mean, we're 14 days into September, but I know it takes time to compile the numbers. So we won't have the third quarter until maybe, at best, maybe the 10th of October, something like that. As far as you putting it in the form we can review it with.
Correct.
Which is a key set of numbers because we're pretty much there.
Let's just say anecdotally then that through the second quarter, do you see any major changes or surprises from the second quarter, which we're going to end up with it was a $90,000 positive variance actually in the projected for 2021.
Actually, I would, the way that it looks now, and I actually just had a call with Chester County Tax today, EIT is up considerably versus 2017, 18, and 19, and part of that is salaries are higher, but a large part also is they've been sending out delinquency letters. So they had 2018 data, which we're seeing the impact of. And they said within the next 2 to 3 months, they'll have 2019 delinquency information to send out. So it looks like that could really be strong. And we could be looking at possibly a couple $100,000 positive variance. I think the expenses we have budgeted for 2021 should come in pretty close to where we are looking. So
That's positive, Dave. And of course, we have $9,000 that we're gonna be spending on this truck. I didn't ask where that 9,000 is coming from. Is it coming from the general fund or the capital reserve?
capital reserve.
Okay, so that kind of clears that into a different fund, from a different fund. And then, of course, we'll have the new employee, probably by the end of the year, we'll have maybe $9,000 itself with some new employee. I mean, the new employee is probably not gonna come on board until probably the 1st of October, something like that, so maybe a full quarter.
Yeah, I'm expecting it's about 12 weeks.
Okay,
That'll
so
be on the
maybe
books.
10 or 12,000 extra, so you net those two known, only got one net out of it. But that's a positive report. That I'm pleased that you got an update on that for the moment. Thank you.
Mhm. Let's see.
And of course, you did note just now that with the EIT, that's a reflection of some prior year collections. That's not the current year. So in projecting for next year, it's great to get 2018 and 2019 dollars and 2020 dollars as they work on them, and as we somewhat normalize from that the prior year particularly. But those are recouped dollars, and we get them every year. But we've had a nice boost, it sounds like, from some of those earlier year dollars.
Yeah, and I talked to one woman from Stephanie, who does things from Keystone for us, and she's going to hopefully by Friday give me some more detailed information about our particular EIT tax base, so that I can discern a little bit more how much is current that's coming in as opposed to delinquent.
And Keystone Collection Group typically gives us a projection if we ask for it, what they think the projection is going to be both year end, Dave, as well as next year. So if it's not Stephanie Rose Haar, who's a VP with she's a contact as well, but it sounds like you made a good contact with Stephanie, but they will provide that if you.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Rose too, because she was the one leading the call today primarily, and she knows, she was planning on digging more into specifics for individuals, and I want to be on that list, so.
You mean you're going to be one of the top 10 EIT?
I hope so.
They always look for that when we do our credit rating, et cetera. We're your 10 top taxpayers.
Right. So we're focused tonight on the general fund budget. Subsequently, we can look at all other funds and also how the capital projects are going to fit into that. But I'd like to focus first on the general fund because it's our primary operational fund. It's driving almost all of our revenue. And so here I put together some historical numbers, 2018 through 2021 budget, plus the most recent projection, that's the July projection, and 2022 preliminary budget. This is, as Derek mentioned, the very rough early first pass of 2022.
Let me interrupt you on that one item. Does that 2022 budget number include the new employee we just
Yes.
indicated? Okay, good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to show a breakdown of where revenues are currently coming from, and this is the 2022 budget numbers. Obviously, predominantly, it's all of our enabling taxes. We have a minimal inter-fund operating transfers. Those are coming from various other funds, and then license and permits is another strong candidate, and everything else is predominantly very minimal.
Can I just ask a question? What is state shared revenue and entitlement? Is there maybe more user-friendly term for that? Because I didn't know what that was.
That's the accounting, the DEC accounting name for that grouping.
Yeah,
So
we're going to
within
get
that
into it a little
Like
bit
pension
more
state
detail.
aid, public utility realty, amount. But state police, I think, is in that one too. Our state police finds that we get a
All right, so
piece of change.
we'll get into the breakdown.
Which one you said, the shared revenue entitlement?
Yes,
It's PA Liquor Control Board, pension state aid,
okay.
HHW rebates, the
Okay.
Buick realty tax.
Thank you.
And you can definitely see the interest earnings are basically 0% of this, and that was quite a difference in 2019, which is why you see that bump up there in 2019.
Yeah, that's a big hit for any organization these days. It's using those as part of their revenue source.
Mhm.
That's a big deal, big change.
Yeah, as an aside, most of our invested fund dollars that we're able to put away are only at about 0.2% right now.
0.25, something like that. And
Yeah.
That's with Pliget, right?
It's
Prime
Pliget,
account.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the best it can do. Yeah. I got it.
So just some initial notes. The transfer tax continues to decline, so I've built in a percentage decline based on what we've seen in the last few years.
Yep.
Interest earnings flat, as I just spoke about. Building permit revenue, the information I've read about the housing market as well as construction seems like that could continue at a pretty good clip into 2022. And recreational revenue, obviously versus last year is up huge, but in general versus 2019, 2018. So Jason must be doing a great job, and I think people are clamoring to get outdoors, be involved, get activities for their children. So that's great to see as well. Here are all those items, Michelle, that you were talking about. This is just a high level look at them. The variance that I put together is 2022 budget versus 21 budget. Because 2020 was such an outlier year, I think the 21 budget is a better leap at this point until I get third quarter 2021 projections. So it's kind of splitting the difference between revenues and expenses by budget item. You can see the fines at $219,000 that sticks out. That is because it was budgeted as we actually got an expense reduction from WEGO for prior year, and we budgeted as revenue, and it was actually an expense. So that's a one.
Go through that again.
The 219,000 in fines. The reason why it's such a difference between the 22 budget and the 21 budget is because it was budgeted in 21 as a revenue credit, and it was actually an expense reduction in reality.
I got you. It wasn't revenue at all.
It's gonna come up somewhere else,
Correct.
where
Expense side.
It'll be down in expense.
So the expense will be reduced by that number.
carve out.
Correct.
It's not a revenue,
Six and one half, it
it's
doesn't-
an expense.
It's positive any way you look at it.
Yeah,
And the other one that sticks out would be the enabling tax, and that's the strong EIT and a continuation of fairly strong, even commercial or even residential real estate transfer tax.
Which of these is most at risk?
real estate transfer has the most potential variance, I think. And of course, I think it's great that we don't budget the commercial in there, because that's a real crapshoot. Residential, you can get some feel for knowing what the market is and what it, but going year to year and just giving it a percentage increase, it doesn't work, and it's usually better to be conservative on that, and that's what we're doing. And then we get these boosts every once in a while when a commercial property sells, and it's a real pleasant surprise, as John Alshaw used to announce, and David's announced a couple this year. Those are nice boosters.
The real estate transfer tax is non-recurring revenue, basically. You just don't know.
Yeah.
It's paid
Yeah.
one time on a transfer, so to consider it I always consider it below the budget almost, but
Yeah.
it's almost predictable because we have a lot of dwellings in a township, and year on year, it's somewhat predictable. We pushed it down a little bit in the last budget. And we're surprised at the real estate market during the COVID year. So we actually had a positive variance on that. So, going forward, we're just kind of, if you look at an average year on year, we're running around 725,000. So that's probably a good plug number
Yeah,
for that line item.
I would agree.
Yeah, and just to give you a little background, the average year-to-date 2021 so far for residential sale, the total each month is about $16.5 million. So we're getting 0.5% of that, and I'm really, in this calculation, only estimating $12 million a month. So we've got even more cushion built
Okay.
in.
All right.
And so it's really going to be a great year for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Gives us a nice little cushion there, and that's good. So going down through the budget, what are the big variances year on year that you're, last year, this year's budget to next year's budget, Dave, that would help you?
Under revenue exclusively at this point.
I'm looking at revenue.
Yeah.
It would be earning.
It would be the earned income tax is the large one. And it's predominantly offset by the one-time credit reduction. So in total, revenues are only about $53,000 higher than we budgeted in 2021. And 15,000 higher than I had projected in the 2021 July projection. It's basically flat with the 2021 budget, which is lower than 21 projection at this point, but it's flat with 2020. So that could possibly be a $20,000 to $25,000 increase swing that we see to the positive next year if these revenues, as budgeted, were to remain.
What did you do with the cable fees? Looking down through the list here, I find it.
Trend is all down in the cable. That's on the third category down. Second category, really.
Got it.
And you see the trend from 18, it continues to go down. And one of the big telling features about cable is when, I think it was Verizon just did some renewals, they wouldn't go for a long-term contract now.
Right.
So there's so much uncertainty as to what those kind of companies are going to be doing.
There's no more than 3 to 5 years out.
Yeah. So when they were pushing a number of years back for us to go into 10 and 15-year contracts, Michelle, by the way, and we did with those Verizon contracts, had 10-year plus contracts.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the 2022 budget, I'm forecasting 2% decrease from 2020, which is kind of in line with what we've seen in the last
I
few
agree.
years. Any other particular revenue items?
Well, I just
have a quick comment on that. It'll be interesting to see if any regulatory changes take place on that front, because when technology changes, these companies continue to make the money, but these people are viewing things in a streaming capacity, but it's the same final product, just a different way. So it's interesting that they continue to make the money, but we're getting sort of, out of it.
Yeah, and
I just find it interesting.
When Cohen Law most recently did a review under the COG for our municipalities on and I know we're able to audit them now, that we have the provision in there. But Cohen is always a good one to go to say, with these changing maybe it costs us a few bucks, or maybe we do it through the COG, Michelle, to ask Cohen to give us maybe a little forecast or their current update through the COG. And each of the COG members pays $100 or something for $1,000 or so. I'm sure they can give us some sort of a little memorandum about where they think the industry is for these next 2 or 3 years. And that may give us a sense about, are we able to capture any more revenue with the changing technology? I think that we've always been stymied on that, it seems. So it's worth an inquiry. Michelle, that could be one that would stimulate the COG a little bit.
It'll also be interesting to know what everyone else is doing. Is a 2% decrease enough? Is it, in a budget?
Yeah, and that could be a little bit optimistic, only 2%. I lost track of what the trend has been each year, but it's been a couple of few percent, but it's been steady, it seems,
That's consistent
steady
with-
down.
It's consistent with the previous years. It's been down about
Yeah.
a couple $1,000s. Just for the general public, that, our cable fees are about $425,000 annually of our budget. So if cable fees go away, it creates a $400,000 hole in it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It is a revenue source we've come to rely upon.
So,
Like, who is it that would make that inquiry?
Cohen Law is out of Pittsburgh, and they specialize in telecommunications and all things cable, et cetera.
really top notch.
Yeah, and Derek knows them because the COG has engaged him at least twice, I think, in the last 6 or 8
There are
years.
dozens of municipalities, now
Yeah.
it's all over Chester County.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for instance, Kristen Camp knows them, and she would say they're a go-to because they're right on top of the industry.
Okay.
They're a very good firm.
That's also a good topic to carry over into next year's long-range plan and hopefully getting a net budget for the next 3 years solid.
Yeah, when we do those 5 and 10 year projections, we get some read from Cohen as to what they think that is going on. If they can, if anybody can, I think from their standpoint, with the contacts we've had with them, they might. And that could affect our long range projection if there is a precipitous decline in it.
Okay.
It's interesting to have insurance claims as a budget revenue item. It seems to me that, insurance we get reimbursed for a direct loss. So it's you have a loss and then you have revenue on the other side. I don't know why it's a revenue source, really.
Right, it really is just reducing your expense that you had already put out the door.
Yeah. That's in the third page under the last grouping. It's insurance claims and dividends, budgeted at $30,000. So it's I guess it's a revenue.
It's gotta go in
I
somewhere.
was gonna say, you have to show.
Yeah, that's
Show.
but it's weird to show it as a revenue. Again, unpredictable.
I'm from an insurance guy. so.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
and if you look at it over the years, it's 47 one year and 70 another year, and budgeted at 30 is kind of weird.
Just about with the budget of last year. So we'll have to see where those shake out once we do the other funds.
What does that mean?
It's the money that's transferred in almost as a, you call it a recharge, Chris?
Liquid fuels is a pass-through, right? I mean, it goes right into our liquid fuels account. It does come into the general fund, but it's a
Highway
100%
materials.
transfer.
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
all
a net
highway
zero.
materials and paving. And
Is that all of it?
every bit of it, and it goes. Yeah, but it's all spent every year.
And it has to be.
I understand, but is that all of that number?
No, there's
No.
also a transfer from sewer operating and a transfer from refuse and a small transfer from the municipal authority.
Okay. So that's
Say that, Chris.
revenue.
Dave, for
Yes.
allocations.
Right, we're charging certain people's time, staff time for various administrative activities to different funds to operate those funds. And so it's a small piece, but it's still not insignificant because it's pretty much second after all of our tax revenue.
And it's revenue to the general fund, John, but it's coming from other funds that don't have revenue sources. Some don't have revenue sources, so. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Derek or Dave, you comment, because I've not been
Well,
a fan of it.
we have, it was our plan not to do that based on not just Marty, but the feedback we got from the long range session. Particularly, I know you weren't a fan of it, so, so it was our plan to go forward without that. If the appetite for that changes, let us know, but that wasn't something we were planning on doing, based on the feedback we got in June.
I don't mean to use the word evasive in the way the core budgeting is set up, but it's just, I like it, I like kind of the straight dope, I like the revenues and the expenses, and I don't like this, well, core here for revenue here is and supports and change, it just got convoluted to me.
Yes.
And Marty would always say, well, it's very clear if you understand it, but, you know, our average, resident who's not tuning in, but wants to tune into the budget, and if they see that core, it's
Yes.
kind of, what is this, what's
But
this?
wait a minute, we don't have to talk about average residents, I didn't understand it.
To that point, Mike, to make that point.
Of course, I might not be average.
Our public works and our parks and these different things and the police revenue, and here's what we use it for.
And by the way, John, I agree, Mark and Garrison Keeler, all our citizens are above average.
Oh, yes.
Goshenville and East Goshen.
And if I could just add, regarding the COVID-19, the requirements were to have that in a separate fund. The income came into a separate bank account,
Good.
so it's being tracked as a Fund 19 in ours.
Ooh, that's good, Chris. Does that bank account have a reasonable rate of interest?
1/10% at best,
Yeah.
1/10% at best, yeah, I mean. Yeah.
But it has to be segregated as for auditing purposes.
Okay.
So-
Well, these are time-sensitive funds as well, so you can't lock them up in a long-term investment that would be
Right.
possibly a little more significant. That's the trick with it.
So bottom line, squeezing it, you know, revenue here and revenue there, we end up with a pretty much a flat budget from previous year as far as revenue is concerned.
Yeah.
It's $53,000 higher than minus the COVID funds.
Yeah, and it's
Pretty
similar,
flat.
and it's a similar trend to what we saw in the 10-year projection as well. Revenues are kind of flat at best, and expenses unfortunately continue to rise.
Let me just ask one more question on revenue, and maybe I've lost touch, and I've forgotten, but in transfers, the capital reserve fund can't survive, it's not a revenue generating fund, it's usually the general fund that funds the capital reserve fund. How's that handled as an interfund?
It's gonna be on the expense side. General fund supports it.
Yeah, it was a long day on the course, I'm sorry. It was a triple bogey, it really was. Sorry, thank you.
Any other comments on the revenue side, any anomalies or any other issues or questions or, you know, disputes with what's proposed to be budgeted?
It looks pretty good, David. The only concern I have is whether there's a resurgence of the stupid COVID, which could eat into our revenues again. Pray to God that we don't have that.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, in 2021, you know, we budgeted to take a hit.
Yeah.
And we didn't.
Well, you know, that's right. When we did our budgeting, when I was with East Bradford, and most of the municipalities here in Chester County didn't take the hit that, remember when PSTATS was, Derek was doing projections about what COVID was going to do to municipal revenue sources. It didn't pan out in Chester County, and we're fortunate because we have.
Particularly the townships, the boroughs got hit harder because of their service industry driven
You know, what about
economy, but the
the
townships.
service tax, so where is that one?
That's up top and enabling, under
That's
enabling.
under enabling, that's blended in with other.
Oh,
No,
stands
it's
out
listed
separate
out.
item. It's all the way up at the top, maybe the fourth line.
Oh, local service tax, okay. And so we're budgeting that, yeah, pretty flat.
What's been budgeted is pretty, you know, it's just serious, it's just really a rounded off of what the projection is. It's 333 projected, and we're budgeting 330, so it's a round off more than anything. Yep.
Yeah, and I was also looking back at prior years, 2018, you know, you got 340, then
Yeah.
2019, 337. So I just think we're still comfortable, but on the call today, they did mention that that was the one outlier that was a little bit weaker compared to.
Yeah, I would say that
Taxes they're
that'll be
looking at.
interesting to watch. I mean,
You know, people not coming from other areas to work in our township, those revenues go away. But we budgeted 315 and it's projected at 333, so you plug the 330 number in there, so hopefully we'll be okay. All right, great.
yeah, I think at the moment that side looks pretty comfortable. Thanks on that one, Dave.
Sure.
Yeah, but don't get inflated. We haven't got the expenses yet.
Now let's get uncomfortable. This is everybody's favorite part. So again, I put together the trend so we can see 2018, 2019, 2020, obviously the dip back down, impact of COVID. But then the budget was not too far off really from where we're coming out today, but it's noticeable that our expenses are forecasted higher and we got the revenue to cover it.
General government, why would that be down?
General government covers some categories that are, let me just look under. Specific.
Down versus,
The 2021 projection, 978, 2022 budget, 944. I mean, I'm happy it's down, but I'm surprised. I thought, I would assume you guys are in there. And you're assuming a 3% increase, right?
Well, let's see, we got 964 that was, John, you're looking at 21 budget is 964 for the subtotal for that, is that what you're looking at?
964, the projection is 978, and we're budgeting below both of those at
General expenses seems to be.
it's actually, I'm including the 3% assumption for salaries, and
That's up, right?
that's up, but management salaries are actually down versus the past regime.
All right, sorry, guys, that's good. We need the money.
Give you a heads up on the insurance line. We talked already. So, we already talked about cyber liability a little bit before. Cyber is a toxic coverage right now, where we moved into what the insurance industry calls a hard market. Property coverage is going to go up. Employment practices liability, toxic coverage, no one wants to write it anymore. Those premiums are going up. Executive risk, so directors and officers liability, any of those, the supervisors, those are a tough market right now. So I haven't looked at the line item for insurance right now, but I would talk to the broker and get them to give you a projection on.
We actually did just recently get, remember we got the Univest, and it was actually lower than last year.
And what about the cyber?
That one,
We're still working through that one.
That one's up in the air until we can figure out the best way to navigate it.
What about employment practices liability insurance, EPLI? That's another line to ask about. Just those two. Comp is down. Property's been up. So
Cyber is starting to get, what was it, a year or two ago, when I know we first did cyber over a year. Cyber is starting to establish itself in the market so that they're able to give more value, I think, for the premiums. But it was very uncertain a couple of years ago with Perma doing it, and I think Travelers and a couple of the others, and they didn't have a lot of case, claims history to settle it in, and I don't know how the underwriters work.
The problem is they have history now, and it's not good.
Well, of course.
So, yeah, so a lot of people are right now we're working through with our broker, multi-factor authentication is now starting to be required for businesses and municipalities to be able to be insured for cybersecurity. So that's something Chris, Dave, and I have been working on the last few months with our IT guy, Bert, and trying to see how much more a month that's going to be for it. But it's the way of the future, and there's really no way around it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get coverage if you don't have things like that.
Well, that's a good.
We've seen we're getting 500-year storms every 2 weeks. So to this line item and then getting into the capital workshop, that to me is the scariest unknown for not just us, but for municipalities and states and quite frankly, countries all over the world. I mean, it is just, it's getting to the point where we have and when I say destruction, I don't mean it's catastrophic, but some destruction every other week we're walking into from a weekend storm. So, some of that is just to also just sort of be looking into the future of, we don't know what the heck's gonna happen with Mother Nature year in, year out.
Yeah, this could be higher, and to that point, I did go by Charter Chase with Mark today and saw the headworks that were obliterated by the latest flood. The power is pretty immense, and he's got a good route to fix it, but
Just by way of example, the easement in my neighborhood was pretty much wiped out and it's impassable. And that's an unexpected, they're gonna have to grate that and just put stone in there and just stuff like that, that the storm, the pathway of the water through that area was unbelievable. It's a crazy situation. So that's,
That's probably a good plug number. Hopefully, if we can keep it below that. Who knows? I have one item I'd like to bring up. And I haven't talked to anybody about this, but I got a phone call. Somebody's making a recommendation that our Parks and Rec staff needs to be expanded. So the question is to the staff is consideration for budgeting an assistant for Jason. You think about the Parks and Rec and the activities that were so important during COVID, and what we have going on as far as the activity. Every time we compete, we get these gold recognition. We're one of 5 parks in the nation. And you look at the other 4 contenders and they have staff of 20 Parks and Rec people. We have one guy doing everything. So for the 2022 budget, I'm going to make a recommendation that you consider hiring an assistant for Jason. We have no depth there. We've got no bench strength.
Well, and there's a couple points to that. I want to slip back for a moment to Public Works. And the experience that I had over the years with a very lean Public Works department. Yeah, it's great to be able to broadcast to your citizens that we have a really lean operation and we do all this work with so many people, but the employee equation is really important. It has to do with burnout and not stuffing the department with people that are not fully engaged